You know that moment when you're in a room full of people, your family, maybe your coworkers, people who have known you for years, and someone tells a story and everyone laughs, and you laugh too, and you say the right things at the right times, and no one would ever guess that somewhere in the back of your mind there is this quiet, persistent thought. Does anyone here actually see me? Not the version of you that shows up. Not the woman who remembered everyone's appointments, who held things together through the hard years, who smiled through situations that deserved tears, but you, the real one, the one who has been waiting, patiently and without complaint, for someone to ask. If that thought has crossed your mind, even once, even in a moment you'd never admit out loud, this video is not a coincidence. You didn't stumble here. Something in you went looking, and I need you to know, before anything else, what you have been feeling is real. It has a name, it has a cause, and it has a way out. This is a video about the psychology of Gen X women who became invisible and how they come back. She didn't disappear in a single moment. There was no announcement. No one gathered around and said, "Here is where you begin to fade." It happened the way most losses happen, quietly, incrementally, disguised as love and responsibility. She gave up the career she was building because her family needed her present. She let go of the friendships because there were only so many hours in a day, and her hours belonged to everyone else. She stopped sharing her opinions, not because she didn't have them, but because keeping the peace was easier than being heard. And one morning, maybe it was last week, maybe it was years ago, she stood in front of a mirror and felt the strangest thing. Not that she looked different, but that the woman in the reflection was a stranger. Familiar, but distant, like someone she used to know. To understand why this happens, why so many Gen X women arrive at this exact feeling at this exact stage of life, we need to go back to the beginning. Women born between 1965 and 1984 grew up inside a contradiction that no generation before them had faced quite like this. They were the first to be told, loudly and clearly, that they could have everything: career, family, independence, a life that was fully their own. That message was real, and it came with something else, something quieter, never spoken out loud, which was the simultaneous expectation that they would still give everything up. Psychologists call this the double bind. You are free, and you will sacrifice yourself anyway. Gen X girls absorbed both messages at once. They watched mothers who were exhausted and invisible, while being told they would be different. And then, slowly, over 20 years of adulthood, they became them. Not because they failed, because no one ever told them the trap was still there. This isn't abstract. The data on this is striking, and I want you to hear it, not as a statistic, but as confirmation that what you've been feeling has a name, a cause, and a way through. A study published by the American Psychological Association found that women between 40 and 60 report the highest levels of identity confusion of any demographic in the country. Not teenagers, not elderly women, women in exactly your stage of life. According to research from AARP, 67% of Gen X women say they feel less visible in social situations than they did in their 30s. Not less attractive, less visible. There is a difference that matters enormously. The Cigna Loneliness Index found that women in this age group are among the most isolated in the United States, and the detail that matters most is this: not because they have no one around them, but because the people around them no longer seem to truly see them. And a Gallup study found that midlife women are statistically the least likely group to describe themselves using words like confident, purposeful, or clear about who they are. These are not personality flaws. These are the documented results of decades of quiet conditioning, and they are reversible. So why does this happen at this specific moment? Why 40? Why 50? Why now, after everything you've already survived? There are three forces at work, and they don't arrive separately. They arrive together, compounding each other, which is part of why this stage can feel so disorienting, even to women who consider themselves strong. The first force is what psychologists call role collapse. For the better part of 2 decades, most Gen X women built their identity around what they did for others: mother, wife, caretaker, employee. Those roles gave structure and purpose. And now, as children leave home, as marriages evolve or end, as careers plateau, those roles shift. When the scaffolding moves, the building shakes. If a woman's entire sense of self was tied to those roles, she experiences what researchers call identity diffusion, a disorientation so complete that she genuinely doesn't know how to answer the question, "Who am I?" when no one needs me the way they used to. The second force is societal erasure, and this one is not imagined. Research from the University of Michigan documented that women over 50 are systematically interrupted more, credited less, and rendered nearly absent in mainstream media, professional settings, and even in everyday social conversations. The world doesn't announce that it's done listening. It just gradually stops. The third force is biological. The hormonal shifts of perimenopause and menopause don't just change the body, they alter the brain systems responsible for confidence, emotional regulation, and personal power. Lower estrogen is directly linked to reduced serotonin, and reduced serotonin means lower self-worth, higher anxiety, and a diminished sense of agency. 3 forces, arriving at the same time, and almost no one prepared these women for any of them. Invisibility isn't one story. It takes different shapes, and it matters to name them. Because you may have spent years believing your version was a personal failure. It wasn't. Profile 1. The mother who erased herself. She gave everything. Her schedule was everyone else's schedule. Her energy went to her children, her home, her family's needs. And she did it willingly, even joyfully, for years. But now her children are older. The role that defined her is shifting. And instead of feeling free, she feels hollowed out, like a house the tenants have left. She wonders, in the quiet moments she rarely admits to anyone, who she is outside of being needed. And she feels guilty for even having the thought. Profile 2. The invisible professional. She built something real. She worked in rooms where she had to prove herself twice over to be heard half as much. She climbed. She delivered. And then, somewhere around 45 or 50, something changed. Her ideas started appearing in other people's presentations. Younger colleagues moved past her. People she had trained, mentored, carried. She became the institutional memory of the office, the one who knew everything and was credited for nothing. She didn't lose her competence. The world simply stopped treating it as remarkable. Profile 3. The woman who became invisible after her marriage ended. Either she left or she was left, and she discovered, slowly and painfully, that a significant part of her social identity had lived inside that partnership. The couple's dinners she no longer fit, the mutual friends who quietly chose sides or simply drifted. The realization that she had to rebuild not just her life, but who she was inside it, from scratch, at 50, in a world that was not designed to help her. Different roads, same destination. Here is what the research actually shows. And I want to be precise because the wellness industry has made billions selling women in this stage the idea that they need to be rebuilt from the ground up. That is not what the evidence supports. The first approach is what Northwestern University psychologist Dr. Dan McAdams calls narrative identity reconstruction. His research shows that women who recover a strong sense of self in midlife are almost never the ones who reinvented themselves entirely. They are the ones who went back to the values, the instincts, the ways of being in the world that were true before the erasure began. The question is not, who do I want to become? It is, who was I before I started disappearing? The second is strategic visibility. A study in the Journal of Women and Aging found that women who deliberately and consistently create spaces where they are seen, new communities, creative work, professional pivots, even small acts of self-expression, report dramatic improvements in self-worth within 6 months. Not years, 6 months. Visibility is not vanity. For a woman who has spent decades making herself smaller, being seen is an act of profound and necessary courage. The third is relationship renegotiation. The Harvard Study of Adult Development, the longest-running study on human happiness ever conducted, found one thing above all others that predicts well-being in midlife: the quality of close relationships. Not the number, the quality. Many Gen X women are still in relationships built around who they used to be, dynamics that silently ask them to stay small. Releasing or renegotiating those relationships is not cruelty. It is the work of becoming. If you've stayed this long, I don't think it's because you had nothing better to do. I think it's because something in this landed somewhere real. Maybe one of those profiles felt uncomfortably close. Maybe the data names something you've been carrying for years without having words for it. Maybe you just felt, for the first time in a while, that someone was speaking directly to you. Here is the first step, and it is genuinely simple. Not easy, but simple. Write down 3 things that were true about you before the disappearing began. Not roles, not responsibilities, not the things you did for other people. Things that were yours. A passion you quietly set aside. A way of thinking that made you different. A version of yourself that used to walk into rooms differently, who used to take up space without apologizing for it. That is your thread. That is the beginning of the way back. Dr. Kristen Neff at the University of Texas, whose research on self-compassion is among the most referenced in modern psychology, found that the most reliable predictor of identity recovery in midlife women is this: the capacity to turn toward yourself with the same warmth and patience that you would offer a close friend who was lost. Not fixing yourself, not optimizing yourself, just seeing yourself with the same care you have given to everyone else for 20 years. You have spent decades being the person who holds things together, who makes it work, who stays when staying is hard. It is not selfish to finally ask what you need. It is long overdue. The invisible woman is not a woman who disappeared. She is a woman who was never truly given permission to stay, to take up space, to have needs that weren't attached to someone else's well-being, to be seen, not for what she produces, not for how gracefully she carries the weight, not for what she does, but for who she is, underneath all of it. Nobody told you this was coming. Nobody sat you down at 35 and said, "In 10 years, you may look up and not recognize your own life." Nobody warned you that the erasure would be this quiet, that it wouldn't feel like loss, it would feel like responsibility. This video exists because that silence was wrong. You deserved a warning. You deserved to know that what you were feeling was real and shared and survivable. You are not disappearing. You are between versions. The woman you were, the one who existed before the sacrifices, before the roles, before the quiet weight of everyone else's needs. She didn't leave. She has been here the whole time, patient, waiting for you to have enough space, enough quiet, enough permission to come back to her. This is Nobody Told Us, and this is where she comes back. If something in this video spoke to something real in you, subscribe, because next week we talk about the generation that was raised to make everyone around them comfortable, and what happens finally when they decide to stop.